Well, it's wonderful to see you tonight at our Bible Baptist Connection classes. If you would, please stand and sing with us, Only a Sinner. Not have I gotten but what I received. Grace hath bestowed it since I have believed. Boasting excluded, pride I abase. I'm only a sinner, saved by grace. Only a sinner, saved by grace. Only a sinner, saved by grace. This is my story, to God be the glory. I'm only a sinner, saved by grace. You may be seated for announcements.
Well, good evening to everybody, and it's good to be in the Lord's house on this Wednesday night. And just a few announcements about some upcoming events, and also we'll have a word of prayer. So let's pray first. Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful to gather together in your house this evening. And Lord, we ask your blessing on the classes as they take place across the property. And we ask that you would just continue to develop in us the image of your Son, Lord Jesus Christ. And Lord, that you'd be glorified in all that we say and do in this place. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so just a few announcements here. Just a reminder that Young at Heart is canceled this month due to Bill's health. We'll be giving you some updates concerning the February meeting, though, and so look forward to those. This coming Saturday, there'll be a meeting in the social hall side classroom at 11 a.m. for the ladies ministry that will be forming here at Bible Baptist Church. If you have questions about that, you can see Eileen Anderson or Melanie Zollinger for details. Be at that meeting 11 a.m. and social hall, just in one of those side classrooms there. And then following that meeting at 12 is the Elena Aiken baby shower, Saturday, January 8th, 12 p.m. in the fellowship hall. We're registered on Amazon, and the baby is a boy. So we'll look forward to that. The greeter schedule is posted in the information table in the lobby. So as you exit here on the right side there, you can pick that up. If you're a part of the ushers or greeters ministry, then be sure to do that. And we certainly enjoyed the meal that we received this evening, and we thank all of the ladies who are involved with cooking that. Let's give them a hand. I appreciate that. And so the next meal will be on the first Wednesday of next month. So next week you will have to find food for yourself. And so all of the people at Bible Baptist Church have now turned into hunter-gatherers. And no, I'm just kidding. And so we'll be doing the meals only once a month at this point. And so just make preparation for your own provisions, and that'll be good. Some updates on some things that will be taking place here is we've also, as we announced on Sunday evening on our Vision Night service, is that we'll be doing Super Soul Winning Saturdays once every month on the third Saturday of the month. And our first Super Soul Winning Saturday is January 15th. And on January 15th, we'll be going out into the community to invite people to Community Day. And Community Day will be taking place on February 20th. So pretty soon you're going to be getting an involvement form in your bulletin asking how you'd like to be involved on Community Day. And all hands on deck would be wonderful, and would need help with various things as we, on that day, we'll meet out on the field, and we'll have hot dogs and hamburgers and bounce houses and games and music and special preaching. And Brother Ed Loney is going to come preach for us, and we'll look forward to that. It'll be a wonderful thing to have him present for that. And that'll kick off our revival meeting, and the revival meeting will go through Wednesday night of that same week. And so you'll want to be a part of that, the 20th through the 23rd for the revival meeting. And we'll be giving you some more details about that with your night to invite and all the exciting things going on there. Then the Sundays leading up to the revival meeting, beginning January 30th, we'll have a set of special speakers and preachers who will be present, and some special music in some cases. And we have the first week of that, January 30th, for our season of revival is going to be Ben Everson. He's going to come. He'll be preaching on that day. He'll be singing with his family on that day as well. And Ben Everson has been here on one of our Thriving Thursdays services. It'd be great to have him on a Sunday service. And since you've heard him before, for many of you who've been a part of those Thriving Thursday services, and you'll know you want to invite your friends and family members, coworkers, relatives, neighbors, and all the different connections that you have to be a part of that service on January 30th. And then on February 6th, Brother Don Strange will be preaching for us. Good friend of mine, retired pastor from Winkler Road Baptist Church over in Fort Myers, Florida. And he's a tremendous blessing. And then February 13th, former pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church, which is what Bible Baptist Church and Emmanuel merged years ago. So former pastor of this church, Gerald Fielder, will be with us on that day, as I've asked him to come back annually since we had him come a few years ago. And it's a blessing to us to be a blessing to him. And so thankful for his years of ministry and investment in this community and in this church. And so we look forward to seeing him on February 13th. And then that brings us right up to Community Day. So a whole schedule of events taking place. And then also by this coming Sunday, we'll have some announcements to give to you about our annual time of fasting and prayer for revival. And we'll put our prayer list out in the lobby so that you can sign up for a prayer time on our 24-hour prayer chain. And we'll be giving you the fasting and prayer schedule so that you have the option to participate in that as we do it corporately. We would never mandate that you do so because we believe in individual soul liberty, but we do invite you to be a part of that if you would like to. And we'll be praying for revival, be praying for souls to be saved, for lives to be changed as we approach that time of the revival meeting there. And I think this year we got it narrowed down to 25 days. Is that right? So we started with, we used to do like 4 weeks of different fasting things. We did that for a couple of years. And then we did 40 days of prayer and fasting one year. And I was explaining that during a service, and one of my pastor friends was watching our live stream, and he sent a group text message and said, I'm at home right now watching Aiken explain to his Baptist church how to do Lent. And so anyway, 40 days of prayer and fasting. But then I think last year we did 30 days of prayer and fasting, but we probably needed to fast and pray a little bit longer. I don't know. So anyway, we're going the wrong direction on this thing, but maybe you can take the 25 things, double up, and do 50 or something. So that would be a good thing. Let's all stand together. And wait, just before we do, any Master Club awards? Okay, then you can stand, and we'll dismiss the Master Clubs, kids. And Brother Joshua's going to come and lead us in another song. After he leads us in a verse of song, we'll be dismissed to your adult Bible classes.
I spent in vanity and pride, caring not my Lord was crucified, knowing not it was for me he died on Calvary. Mercy there was great and grace was free, pardon there was multiplied to me, there my burdened soul found liberty at Calvary. You may be dismissed.
Good job, Joshua.
Get my Joel Osteen special here all powered up, ready to go. That joke will never get old. I just want you to know that. Never. And I don't know if I'll ever get used to using one of these, but it's all good. So we're going to the Book of Esther today. The Book of Esther. my wife had said she had wanted to hear something about it, and since my wife writes all this stuff anyways, I figured, okay, might as well listen to her. I say that part jokingly, but I enjoy people studies in the Bible. I don't know about you. I think part of it is, I think when you really study a person in the Bible, you see how, in a way, God can work through them, even though that we are imperfect beings. That we study people in the Bible and realize that they're not perfect. But yet, even if amongst all the issues with David, he can still be a man after God's own heart. That there are lessons that we can learn. There are situations that we might read something that happened 3,000 years ago and realize that, holy cow, I'm going through the same thing right now. And the nice thing about doing the Bible studies is you can do the exact same study of a person a couple years later, and holy cow, because of what you're going through now, you see something totally new. It's nice that the Bible is a living book, that every time you can get something different. So as looking at the Book of Esther you say, how long is it going to take you? I never know how long this stuff is. I don't plan it that way. I talk for a certain amount of time. When the time's up, I say, we'll pick it next week. That's the cool part about teaching instead of preaching. I don't have to end. I just say, we'll go next week. We'll figure it out. We'll see what happens. Could be 13 weeks, could be longer. Who knows? We'll just kind of take it week by week. There's 10 chapters in the Book of Esther, so it gives you an idea at least a little bit. But in doing my study, I kind of came up with this concept and this focus, because I try to have a focus when I study a book or when I study a person, and that is trusting in the sovereignty of God. And I don't know if you guys know this. Do you guys realize that the name of God is not mentioned in the Book of Esther? That's kind of interesting when you really take a look at it, that we have a book of the Bible that's there that doesn't have God's name in it. But you can't read the Book of Esther and not see the hand of God at work. And especially at work in the world's government. I think that's really what we see in the Book of Esther. And I was thinking about the sovereignty of God, and we understand the concept, I think most of us do. The idea that God is God. God has the right to do what he wants with what is his, and everything is his. And that, although God gives us free will, God is still going to work out his will and his way. Now, I don't know about you. Free will versus sovereignty is one of those things that people could say, oh yeah, I understand it. I don't think anybody can truly balance free will and sovereignty in their head. If I have true free will, I should be able to do anything I want, yes? But yet God has sovereignty, which means he is going to have his way and control, and in the end, he is going to control what happens. How can I have free will if God has sovereignty? If God is always in control? I trust that both are true. But to simply say, oh yes, I easily understand it, I think is difficult. I think of the book of Jonah. Did Jonah have free will? That's right. He got on a ship. He went towards, where was he going towards? What? Tarshish. There we go. I lost it for a moment there. I'm going to go sail the other way. Jonah had free will. God says, nope, I got sovereignty. I got a storm, and I got a fish. I laugh like that. I don't think God does. But you get my point, yes? When we're looking at something like the book of Esther, and I think most of us know the story of Esther, so it's not like I'm teaching you something that, oh my goodness, I've never heard this book before. The idea is looking at it maybe from a different way, and from the fact that most of you have been in my class long enough to realize that, boy, I can really look at some things in strange and different ways, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. But we have to understand, how did we get to the book of Esther? So in order to do that, we kind of got to take a very, very quick history of where we were. You see, in the beginning, God created these two people, Adam and Eve. And God gave Adam and Eve a free will. Gave them one key rule. Don't eat that tree. kinds of fruit, all kinds of vegetables. He says, don't eat that one. And what do? They eat that one. Ain't that just like humans? Got to do something wrong. And from the get-go, Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15 says, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. From the time before Adam and Eve sinned, because God knew that they would, God had a plan for redemption, yes? And from the time God had that plan, Satan's been trying to stop it. Would you agree? We're not going to read through all of it, but I do want to go to Genesis chapter 17, because I think it's an important one to read. We get to Genesis chapter 17, where after the flood, and God picks Abraham. If God is going to do what God plans to do, God needs a chosen people. God needs a chosen people to be, I want to be careful here. It's not like, well, God loved these people more than he loves other people. That's not the point. But you had to have a group of people that were tasked with the responsibility of we will be faithful to God and we will spread the message of the gospel and of the true God. You had to have a people that God could task with. There has to be a line for Christ to come through. Therefore, he needed a people. He decided to start with Abraham. And in In Genesis chapter 17, in verse 2, it says, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. Jumping over to verse 6, and I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant to be a God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. Now, we understand, hopefully, the history of the Bible, that after Abraham we had Isaac, we had Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons by 4 different women. Those 12 sons eventually became it turned into 13 tribes. Levi doesn't always get counted in there. Joseph, if you'll remember, got a double blessing. So instead of a tribe of Joseph, we had Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's 2 sons. So when you put them all together, yes, there were 12 sons. Technically, there's 13 tribes. Levi doesn't count because they had a special job that God gave them. Eventually, they end up in slavery, down in Egypt. Things were going good in Egypt to start with. Here was Joseph. Joseph's going to take care of them from a famine, right? And it doesn't take long that after Joseph died that somebody doesn't remember Joseph anymore. And now the Israelites are cheap labor. Here we come along with Moses and Aaron. We have the Exodus. And we head back to the Promised Land. But when we get back to the Promised Land, somebody else has already moved in and taken it. So now we've got Joshua, we've got the judges, and eventually we get into Samuel, and they're tired of judges ruling them. They want a king. Now, did God have a plan for a king? In other words, is God sovereign? Sure he did. But did the people want to follow that plan? Did they? No, they said, we want our king now. So they got one. They got King Saul. Did that upend God's plan? No, that didn't upend God's plan. Still ended up with David on the throne. Went from David to Solomon. Unfortunately, because of the acts of Solomon, the kingdom split. We had a northern kingdom made up of 10 tribes. Started off with Rehoboam, and not a single good king in the lot. And I forget the year, forgive me for not remembering it, around 687 BC, I think is what it is, in that area. They're taken away captive by the Assyrians. Southern kingdom had some good kings in there. Started off with Rehoboam, although he wasn't very smart. A few good ones, way too many bad ones. And in the end, Satan has a laugh as they get carried away to Babylon. And in a way, does Satan think he won? Israel's not in control of their land anymore, are they? Israel doesn't have a kingdom anymore. There is no king. Does that stop Satan from what he tries to do? No. But even in going off to Babylon, God still has a plan, doesn't he? God's still going to have his will and his way. When we read in the book of Daniel, we can read an awful lot about what happened during that time. If you read the book of Daniel, guess what kings you're talking about? Kings like Nebuchadnezzar, the one who started that. And if you'll remember, in these captivity years, what did Nebuchadnezzar do when he conquered Israel? Did he deport all of them? Probably not all. But we could probably say he deported the best of them. You think about it. If you want to truly conquer a country, you really need to assimilate them into yours. Would you agree? The way you do that, take the best of theirs and bring them home to you, and make sure you train them in the way you want to train them. You know, we see sometimes in our, I don't know if you guys pay enough attention, to politics and stuff, but we realize there's been a lot of fights going around nationwide about, whether or not parents should have a say in how their kids are educated. How can we not agree that parents should have a say in how their children are educated? But let's be honest. No matter which way you look at it, and I'm not trying to say one view over another, a school is going to have a certain amount of indoctrination. Because how I believe is going to influence how I instruct the people who are under me. Is the way you believe going to affect the way you instruct your children? Now, granted, I teach a subject that, I'm very fortunate. Math, there's not really a lot of things you can do with math in my mind. Math is math, it's numbers. I like teaching math. It's one of the reasons I do. We bring them back. We leave everybody else there. We just bring in our own people to kind of run everything. So were there Israelites left there? Yeah, but not the kind of people who are going to say, hey, we're going to be able to, still be autonomous. Babylon lasted for a while. There were a couple kings, and then who took over after that? Here came the Medo-Persian Empire, if we know our history, right? Started with, if I remember correct, Darius. Darius comes in. And Darius conquers Belteshazzar, if I remember correct, was Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, who was the last king, really. And basically starts the whole process over. And what do we notice about Daniel? And it's interesting, you say, why are you talking about Daniel if we're going to get to Esther? We're talking about the sovereignty of God and how he's running everything according to his plan. Daniel and his friends, when they get taken, they said, we're not going to eat the portion of the king's meat. They take a stand. Nebuchadnezzar, in all of this, says, okay, prove yourself. They prove themselves. And by the time you get to the end of Daniel, let me flip over here, Daniel chapter 6. Just throwing it out, because Daniel is before Esther. I got to find Daniel now. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel. You do it too. It's okay. That's what I'm doing. I don't know what page Daniel is on. I'm pretty sure it's Daniel chapter 6. Let me just take a quick look when I get there. And in Daniel chapter 6, it says, and it pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes. Did you guys know that the Medo-Persian Empire was probably the largest of the ancient empires as far as its dominance? Up until about the time we get to Rome. I know we had like a Greek empire, we had like an Assyrian empire, but they paled by comparison to the Medo-Persian Empire. 120 provinces. Can you imagine trying to rule that much space with technology that is 2,500 years old for us? Let's be honest. If President Biden wants to talk to Vladimir Putin, it's just a phone call away, even though he's half a planet away, right? If Darius wants to talk to one of his princes. Okay, messenger on a horse. Let's go. And how long is it going to take the Pony Express to get there? Depends on how fast they ride, and hopefully there's no issues. It's going to take some time, though, isn't it? 120 princes, 120 provinces. Verse 2 says, and over these 3 presidents, of whom, guess who? Daniel was the first. We understand that Daniel had influence under Nebuchadnezzar. And because, you have to understand how things would have worked back then, I have no doubt in my mind that Darius had met Daniel before he ever took over before he conquered the Babylonian Empire. Because if Daniel was as important as he was in the Babylonian Empire, he would have gone around and interacted with other people. And I think Darius made sure his men knew, you watch out for this one. I need this guy. I don't need you to kill him. I need you to get him because we need him in our group. And Darius made him president. He was in one of the most lofty positions. By the way, so was Joseph in Egypt, wasn't he? God used Joseph to work in a worldly kingdom, the Egyptian. God used Daniel to work in a worldly Babylonian and a worldly Medo-Persian Empire. You guys following? Now, by the time we get to the Book of Esther, and now we can go to the Book of Esther. Chapter 1, verse 1. It says, now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. This is Ahasuerus which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia over 127 provinces. We're going to stop right there. We understand that historically you don't find the name of Ahasuerus because that would be a Hebrew name. True? I'm pretty sure the Persians did not call their king Ahasuerus. I mean, most of you guys, I know this. My name is William. That's my name. But I also know from my time working in a Spanish ministry over at another church that many of the Spanish-speaking people, when I would get up there and lead singing in Spanish, not fully knowing what I was saying, but I could carry a tune and I could pronounce the words. Many of them would call me Hermano Guillermo, because I know that Guillermo means William in Spanish. Now, so who is Ahasuerus? You do enough reading, you'll get different answers. Probably the most common is that he's Xerxes, which would have been Darius's grandson. A lot of that is based upon the fact that if you read through into chapter 2 and it starts to talk about Mordecai, it talks about Mordecai's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather who was taken away during the captivity of Jehoiachin, one of the last kings of Israel. So we can probably speculate about where we would be. But suffice to say, this is what I want you to see as we get to the book of Esther. There are Jewish people scattered all throughout the Medo-Persian Empire. If we're 100 years away from being taken from Israel, and even if they took the best of the best, and yes, they left some in Israel, how many Israelites would there have been in the Medo-Persian Empire in Iran? Because I believe Shushan, which is going to mention the palace, present-day Iran, the center. How many Israelites? Ask Pharaoh how many Israelites were in Egypt not that many generations after Joseph brought the family down. Matter of fact, so much so that they were saying, no, whoa, this people's way too great. They're going to overtake ours. We got to do something. So put everything in context here. Somebody might ask, and I don't know if you've ever had this thought, why didn't they just go back? Why didn't they just go back? We're 100 years down the road. Did you think any of them probably thought, we should go back to Israel? No. Here's how I thought about it in my head. May I? Okay. I am several generations removed from being true Irish. My grandma and my grandpa Britton. My grandpa Britton was an illegal immigrant who snuck across the border from Canada into Michigan. He was illegal for 4 days till he got a job. My dad was born in America, though. Now, I want you to think about that. Now, to my grandfather, which I never met, my grandma, which I did, she passed away when I was in high school, used to hear her talk about it. To her, Ireland was home. You with me? Do you think it's home to me? Nope, never been. I'm not lying, I would love to go. But if you ask me when I think about my heritage being Irish, I don't long for, I look at pictures and go, wow, that's really cool. I would love to go see this place. There's certain things I would like to do just because I know that my heritage is Irish. But I don't think of myself as Irish as far as a major identity. Are you with me? But you know what I do think about myself as? Where I was born. Guess where I was born? I was born in Michigan. I had this discussion with somebody the other day. I will turn, I know I look so young. I'll shock everybody. I will turn 53 on Friday. You know what I'm saying? 53. Okay, if you're older than me, you can say, you young whippersnapper. But I'm telling you, I feel old right now, okay? I get older all the time. At 18 years, I didn't move down, but I went to Pensacola for college. From that day, when I was 18, I've spent more of my life in Florida than ever in Michigan. You with me? But if you ask me today, do I consider myself a Floridian? No. I don't care what you say. Yes, deep down I'm a Floridian. I do not consider myself a Floridian. I am a Michigander. I will always be a Michigander because that's really close to me. I have a feeling that Daniel always longed to go back to Jerusalem, to Israel, because that's where he was taken from in his youth. But when we get to the time of Esther and we have these Jewish people who are there, they're not looking back at Israel going, oh, there's home. You know where home is to them? Right here where we are. This is where we've been living for the last 100 years. This is where my family's from. So I think sometimes in my mind I've always had this, well, why didn't more of them just go back? Why weren't they all running and trying to get back? It's because, why would I do that? I'm not packing up my family trying to run back to Ireland. You know what I'm saying? Even though that's where my ancestry is from. You say, do you ever want to go back to Michigan? Not right now, I don't. I'm okay in the winter months being a Floridian. De facto, I guess. I do miss seasons. Don't tell me you don't miss fall and winter. We have 2 seasons in Florida, hot and hotter. That's all we got. Right now we're in the hot season. Oh wait, we get 2-3 cold days a year. I think we're in the midst of maybe half of one of them or something. I don't know. But God has a plan, yes? Israel's spread out. But you realize God promised to Abraham, that land is for you. That land is for your descendants. But right now they're not in control of it, are they? And they're not going to be in control of it for quite a while. But just like Joseph showed God's sovereignty in the nation of Egypt, just like Daniel showed God's sovereignty and how he controlled and worked in the kingdom of the Babylonians as well as the Medes and the Persians, we have the book of Esther where God is showing through Esther, a young Jewish woman, and her cousin Mordecai, how God is still sovereign in the affairs of men in what is pretty much a pretty wicked kingdom. You know, Xerxes, unlike Darius, who came in and had to do a lot of conquering, Xerxes, by comparison, you know, he's coming in and is inheriting an awful lot. 127 provinces. It extends from India all the way into Ethiopia. North of Africa, it's extending up towards Greece. And most of us know that there was a time when there was an attack into Greece. You guys know that, right? Didn't go so well for the Persians. Let's go back and read. So here's Ahasuerus. It says in verse 2, in those days when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him. I picture this in today's standard is, today it would be, we need to have a Teams meeting. Let's everybody get on our Zoom. We're all going to meet. I mean, now, I'm not in a business world, but I know at least at my school, today we had, what did we have today? SAC meeting, School Advisory Council. So for those of us who are on School Advisory Council, we get the invite, and I don't know, there were 15 or 20 of us sitting on a Teams call, all on video, while our administration is talking to us. Do you know sometimes what we get during those calls? We get instructions about what we need to do, right? We get pep talks about what we can do to do better, how we can better help our students. What happened good this week? What do we need to be worried about? I know for the last couple of days, I don't know if you pay enough attention to the news, we had a social media thread at our school. We had discussions about that. Technology is great, isn't it? Ahasuerus didn't have Zoom. He didn't have Teams. And mail wasn't going to work. So he decides to pull everybody together. 127 provinces. He says, let's get everybody together for a conference. Any of you in your jobs ever had to go to a conference somewhere, gone to a convention center? You've done that? And you all get around in a group and they say, ooh, some of you guys are going to this breakout session. Ooh, some of you guys go to this breakout session. I've done a few of those. I've gotten to go to some state, conferences in regards to mathematics, which is what I teach. And it's always cool when they're footing the bill, isn't it? Well, it's not bad. I got to go to one this past summer. There was the new math best standards that are being released. And the district picked like 20 people and said, we're yanking you all over there to learn all these new best math standards. Somehow I got put on that list. I don't know why. They picked up the hotel. And they even let us have our own room. They didn't even make me share a room with somebody else. That was cool. That was the best part right there. Right? They paid me for my food. Even if I didn't eat it, they paid me for it. They rented me a car, and it just wasn't a car. It was like a, what was it? I don't know what it's called. It was a minivan, and I don't have one. Now, my car is a 2003 Honda. I like my car, but my car has no bells or whistles. I got into this car, and the first thing I did is I looked at the guy I had to go pick it up. And I go, where's the key? He gives me this little thing. There's no key on it. I'm going, where am I supposed to stick this? He goes, you don't put it anywhere. He says, just push that button. I'm like, what? And I got it. That's how bad it is. You got to understand. Some of you guys probably have this technology. I'm old school. I was like, I push a button and it starts. He's like, yep. I was like, well, what happens if somebody gets the... I don't want to know. Can you accidentally lock the keys in? I don't know. Before he walked away, I went, no, not so fast. I said, I don't understand all this. I said, how do I put gas in this thing? Oh, I couldn't figure out how to open the gas cap. I had to ask him how to put the car in drive. I'm looking for a stick shift somewhere. Is there one on the column? Is there one on the floor? I have one on the floor. He's like, no. He says, there's this little dial. Just spin it. Like, looking at him going, are you kidding me? Now, right now, you guys should feel bad for me, right? Because most of you guys are laughing because you probably have vehicles. How many of you guys have a vehicle where you do this already and you're laughing at me? Thank you very much. Make me feel bad. I felt bad because I had to have the guy spend 15 minutes to explain to me. And yes, I even asked him, now, how do I turn down the radio? Because I forget what radio station he had blaring. I didn't want to listen to it. Oh, by the way, it'll also pair to your phone. I'm not hooking my Bluetooth phone up to this thing. I'll probably rewrite the software in my phone and take it over. Now, I got to admit, I don't get to do this stuff often. The district rented me a car. I was supposed to drive with 2 other people. I only had to pick up 1. Stayed in a pretty nice hotel. It was under renovation. There was some dust, but we got a really nice room. Not nearly as nice as the district personnel who got a super nice room, but our room was nice. We ate well. I felt special. That's what Ahasuerus did. I'm going to go so far as to say that Ahasuerus didn't just send a letter and say, hey, meet at my place. I think he sent a cool chariot. Ooh, I'm going to give you the stretch chariot. 6 wheels, not 2. Forget 2 horsepower. This has got 8. Gold-plated spinner rims. You know what I'm saying? Overdrive. Chauffeur. Probably had snacks in the seats too. And he went and picked them up. And he brought them back. And he said, we're going to have some sessions. And we're going to have some fun. We're going to eat, and we're going to eat good. Now, I don't know how you are, but going just to the food for a moment. When I go on vacation, I have one word for you: cheap. The last time I drove to Michigan, where do you want to eat? Who's got the quickest drive-through? By the way, it's a lot of fun to try and put mayonnaise and ketchup on your Chick-fil-A sandwich when you're the only one in the car. I just want you to know that while you're driving on I-95 or I-75 or the Turnpike or anything else. You say, do you actually do that? Not to anybody who's listening who has, some kind of thing. Yeah. On this trip, the first place we went, I had never heard of this place. I looked down at the menu. I'm looking at the entrees. They're all like $25 a piece. I just found an appetizer for like $13 and said, yeah, that's all I want. You say, well, the district was paying for it. I'm reading stuff that I don't even know what it is. And I'm looking at all these people who are eating it, and I'm sorry to say, but I think I was the only person who ordered soda. I'll just leave that there. Hence, I became the designated driver, which was fine. These guys, man, they're coming back. They got the best food. They've got premier entertainment. Let's just read a little bit about it, okay? It says here in verse 4, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty, many days, even, wait, how long did this conference last? 104 score. 180 days he took them away from their provinces. By the way, smart guy would have made sure he sent somebody in there and said, you're going to take care of this place while they're gone, right? You don't think there wasn't something to that either, do you? And for 180 days, for 6 solid months, he wined, he dined, and don't forget that he had breakout sessions, because what is Ahasuerus trying to do? He wants to make sure that he's the best ruler ever. He doesn't want to be Herod the Great because he calls himself Herod the Great. He wants to be known as Ahasuerus the Great because other people say, you're the greatest. You do that for me long enough, I'm going to be pretty happy with you as my king, yes? And for 180 days of being treated really well, oh, by the way, you do know one of the things that he wanted was, don't you? I want to expand into Greece. If I am going to expand into Greece, I am going to need all of your help because it's going to take resources. It's going to take soldiers and people away from you. It's going to take materials. It's going to take money. You understand, Ahasuerus wasn't just throwing a party to throw a party. He had an awful lot at stake. Yes, he was incredibly arrogant and egotistical, and he was pretty much puffing himself up like you couldn't believe. But don't think that he was stupid. I need these people on my side. I need them to be willing to follow me. And for 6 months, it's not just about I'm going to wine and dine you. For 6 months, it's also about me indoctrinating you to make sure that you're willing to do what I need you to do. And I hate to say it, don't tell me that you aren't going to be influenced by that if you were there. 6 months of being treated a whole lot better than you are necessarily at home. Who wouldn't want to go stay in a nice place where I can have a maid come in every day and clean up the place, get me fresh towels, change the sheets? Who doesn't want to be able to eat out at a nice restaurant every single day with somebody else paying the bill? I don't have to cook. I don't have to do the dishes. You know? Who doesn't mind driving around in a brand new car? Like I said, 2003. My car is now upwards of, it's almost classic. This is 2022. My car is 19 years old. What am I, 6 years away from having a classic car? Saying, needs a paint job. But you get my point. Who doesn't want to be driven around in style, even if you have to drive yourself? And I can tell you what happens. I go sit in sessions on the new best math standards, and guess what they do while I'm sitting there in those sessions? Do you think somebody gets up there and goes, can you believe it? They're changing the math standards again. Here we go, bunch of new things to learn. Doesn't really matter, kids aren't going to learn it anyways. Do you think that's what we did in our sessions? Okay, that's what one or two of us did who are realists. That's kind of what happened. But do you know what everybody up front was doing? Woo! We had 53, sorry. They were the biggest cheerleaders in the group, yes? We all walked out of there with prizes. We got stuff. We walked out of there with not just prizes, we walked out of there with notebooks, all printed in color. We sat in sessions and they told us how great everything was and how it was going to work and how much better these math standards are than the other ones. And I'm sitting here going, if the other ones were so bad, why did we use them for so long? But at the end of 3 days, you know what I was walking out thinking? Go ahead, because you already know. What was I thinking at the end of 3 days? Hey, wow, we got some pretty good new math standards. All right. By the way, I do actually think they're better. That's not because I was indoctrinated. That's because they are actually better math standards than they were. But can you imagine how easy it is to influence somebody based on how well you treat them? Now, verse 5 says, and when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days. That's right. The last feast was a 7-day affair. And at this feast, they had the ultimate best of the best. If I was there, I would be thinking, boy, I sure hope they have some barbecue baby back ribs. I don't know about you. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know if they did or not, but that's what I'd want. Some chicken, some fried chicken. I'd even take some barbecue smoked chicken. That'd be good. That's good stuff. And I sure hope, I don't know if they had this back then, but man, if you don't have, see, this is where my Irish part comes out. You better have some potatoes. I don't care how, but there better be some potatoes. Give them to me baked, give them to me mashed, give them to me French fried, give them to me in chips. I don't care. People think I'm weird. My parents always did. They still do. I will eat a potato raw if you give me some salt. I just love potatoes. I better hope there's some French fries. 7 days of this. Verse 6, it talks about there was white and green and blue hangings fastened with cord, fine linen, purple, silver rings, pillars of marble. The beds were made of gold and silver. By the way, does not sound very comfortable to sleep on, but wow, pretty opulent. Pavement of red and blue and white and black marble, and they gave them to drink in vessels of gold. I'm taking that cup home with me. How about you? Now, that's a souvenir cup to take home. I'm saying, I've taken a few souvenir cups home from like Disney World or SeaWorld or something like that. I've never gotten a gold one. That'd be pretty cool. Keep the soda flowing, man. I need the unlimited refills on my Coke. Verse 8, and the drinking was because I forgot to finish reading verse 7. And royal wine in abundance. For 6 months, he made sure his vineyards were working overtime. So the best of the best wine came out at the very last. And everybody got it. Verse 8 tells us, and the drinking was according to the law. None did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house, check this last one, that they should do according to every man's pleasure. For 7 days, nothing is withheld from you. Now, put that in a worldly context. What do you think's going on for 7 days in the palace? You think there's a little bit more than eating and drinking going on in this place? I don't want to go any more than that. I think we can all understand that 7 days, pretty much anything goes. And then we get to verse 9. It says, and Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. Keep in mind culture. You know, it's difficult to read what happened in history necessarily in light of how we are today. But in that culture, men and the women would not have been partying together. It would have been separate. The guys would have had their gatherings and meetings. Vashti would have been expected to plan and take care of the women. And she did. And then it says in verse 10, and on the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, I'm not going to read the names, but I got to say, Bigtha's got to be a cool one. It says, he commanded these guys, his chamberlains, that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king with the crown royal. And we're going to stop it there, because we're going to see how God's sovereignty enters in the midst of a wild, sinful, gluttonous, debauch, I don't know, whatever kind of nasty adjective you can think of, party. How God's sovereignty is still there. And we'll pick up there next week. Sound good? All right. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for your love to us and the study that we're starting. Lord, we pray that we would just focus in on your sovereignty and understand that no matter what's going on around us in the world today, that deep down we know that you're in control of all the events and you can still have your plan and your way and your will worked out. Lord, we pray that you just help us to trust you in all things.